Magic Psychic Training Part 2. In the first phase, the pupil has learned how to practice introspection. He has recorded his good and bad properties in accordance with the four elements, and has divided them in three groups. In this way, he has made two soul mirrors, a good white one and a bad black one. These two soul mirrors represent his psychic character. Now he must find out from these records which elemental powers are prevailing in him on the good as well as the evil side, and endeavor to establish the balance of these elemental influences at all events. Without a balance of the elements in the astral body or in the soul, there is no possible magical progress or rise. Consequently, in this step, we must establish this psychic equipoise. If the novice magician possesses a sufficient amount of willpower, he may pass on to master the passions or qualities that exercise the greatest influence on him. Should he not own a sufficiently strong volition, he may start from the opposite side, by balancing small weaknesses first, and fighting greater faults and weaknesses bit by bit until he has brought them under control. The scholar is offered three possibilities for mastering the passions. Number one, systematical utilization of autosuggestion in the way we described previously. Number two, transmutation of passions into the opposite qualities attainable through autosuggestion or through repeated meditations on and continuous assurance of the good qualities. Number three, attention and volation. By using this method, you will not allow for any outbreak of the passion, fighting it right in the bud. This method is the most difficult, and it is appropriate only for people possessing a good deal of volation or willing to achieve a strong willpower by fighting against their passions. If the novice has enough time on hand and wishes to advance as fast as possible in his development, he may use all three methods. The most profitable way is to orient all methods towards one single direction. For example, conscious eating, magic of water, and so forth. Then success will not be far off. The purpose of this step is to balance the elements in the skull. The scholar, therefore, ought to quickly and surely endeavor to get rid of these passions that hinder him most from being successful in the magic art. Under no circumstances should he start with exercises belonging to the steps ahead before being absolutely possessed with the exercises of the second step and having booked a sweeping success, especially in balancing the elements. The refinement of character should be aspired after during the entire course, but as early on this level, faults and bad qualities that handicap development ought to be eradicated. Magical Physical Training 2. The tasks of the magical training of the body, according to Step 1, must be retained and not to become a daily habit, such as washing with cold water, rubbing the body from head to toe, athletic exercises in the morning, magic of water, conscious breathing, and so forth. The second step, training of the body, orders a change of the breathing exercises. In the previous step, we have learned how to breathe consciously and convey the desire inhaled together with the air through the Akasa principle to the bloodstream via the lungs. In this chapter, I am going to describe the conscious pore breathing. Our skin has a double function, i.e., the breathing and the secretion. Therefore, we may consider the skin as a second piece of lungs and as a second kidney of the body. Everybody will understand now for which important reason we have recommended dry brushing, rubbing, washing with cold water, and all other directions. First of all, this was intended to exonerate our lungs completely and our kidneys partially, and secondly, to stimulate the pores to greater activity. It is certainly superfluous to explain how very profitable all of this is for the health. From the magic point of view, conscious pore breathing is of the utmost interest to us, and therefore we shall immediately pass on to practice. Sit down comfortably in an armchair or lie down on a sofa and relax all of your muscles. Try to think that with each inspiration, not only your lungs are breathing, i.e., inhaling air, but the whole body is doing so. Be firmly convinced that together with your lungs, each single pore of your body simultaneously receives vital power and conveys it to the body. You ought to feel like a dry sponge, which when dipped into water sucks it in greedily. You must have the same feeling when breathing in. This way the vital power will pass from the etheric principle and surroundings to yourself. According to his character, each individual will feel this entering of vital power through the pores in a different manner. When after a certain amount of time and repeated exercises, you are skilled in the inhaling through the lungs and with the whole body simultaneously, connect the two breathing methods to your desire inhaling, i.e., breathing in health, success, peace, mastering of passions, or whatever you need most urgently. The fulfillment of your desire, imparted in the presence of your commandments or moods, is to be realized not only through the lungs and the bloodstream, but through your whole body. If you have attained a certain skill in this experiment, you may also influence exhaling magically by imagining that each breathing out you are secreting the opposite to of your desires, such as weakness, failures, troubles, and so on. If you have exceeded in exhaling and inhaling through your lungs and whole body, this exercise is completed. The next exercise will deal with control of your body. It needs a great deal to sit quietly and comfortably, and therefore it is necessary to learn how to do so. Sit down on a chair in such a way that your spine remains straight. At the beginning, you are allowed to lean back on the chair. Hold the feet together so that they form a right angle with the knees. Sit relaxed without any strain on other muscles. Both your hands resting lightly on your thighs. Set an alarm clock to sound off after 5 minutes. Now close your eyes and watch your whole body. At first, you will notice that the muscles are becoming restless in consequence of the nervous stimulus. Force yourself as energetically as you can to preserve to sit quietly. However easy this exercise seems to be, as a matter of fact, it is rather difficult for a beginner. If the knees tend to separate constantly, you may tie them together with a string to begin with. If you are able to sit without jerking any special effort for 5 minutes, each new exercise is to be extended 1 minute longer. If you have managed to sit for at least 30 minutes quietly, comfortably, and without any trouble, this exercise will be finished. When you have arrived at this point, you will state that there is no better position for the body to relax and to rest. Should anyone wish to use these exercises of psychic carriage for the purpose of developing the willpower, he may make out various carriage at his own discretion. Provided he is able to sit relaxed and comfortably without any disturbance at all for a full hour, the Indian yoga system recommends and describes quite a lot of such positions, asserting that one may win various occult powers by mastering them. It must be left undecided whether it is on the strength of these asanas that such powers are set free. We need a certain position for our magical development. no matter which one, the simplest being that which we described above. It is meant to reassure the body and strengthen the willpower. The main point will always be that mind and soul are in need of an undisturbed action of the body, a problem to be discussed in special exercises further on. Those scholars who become very tired, mentally as well as physically, in performing the exercises of the first and second steps, and fall asleep regularly during the concentration and meditation exercises, will do best practicing them in an aforementioned position. The beginner ought to practice this sort of body control in his everyday life. He will find a great deal of opportunity by observation and attention. For example, if you feel tired, force yourself to do something else, in spite of your tiredness, irrespective of this being any hobby or short of a walk. If you feel hungry, put off the meal for a half hour. If you feel thirsty, do not drink on the spot, but wait for a while. Being used to hurrying all the time, try to act slowly on the other way around. Anyone who is slow should make a point of working fast. It is entirely up to the scholar to control and force body and nerves by willpower. This is the end of the second step exercise. Step 3. Knowledge, daring, volition, and silence. These are the four pillars of Solomon's temple, i.e., the microcosm and the macrocosm, upon which the sacred science of magic is built. According to the four elements, they are the fundamental qualities which must be inherent in each magician if he aspires to the highest perfection in science. Everyone can acquire magic by diligence and assiduity, and mastery of the laws will lead him step by step to the supreme wisdom. Volition is the aspect of willpower that can be obtained by toughness, patience, and perseverance in the holy science, and chiefly in its practical use. He who does not intend to satisfy his sheer curiosity only, but is in earnest willing to enter the path leading to the loftiest heights of wisdom, must possess an unshakable will. Daring. He who is not afraid of sacrifices nor hindrances, indifferent to other people's opinions, who keeps his objective firmly in his mind, no matter whether he meet with success or with failure, will disclose the mystery. Silence. The braggart who is talking big and exhibiting his wisdom will never be a genuine magician. The true magician will never make himself conspicuous with his authority. On the contrary, he will do anything not to give himself away. Silence is power. The more reticent he is about his knowledge and experiences, without segregating himself from other people, the more he will be awarded by the Supreme Source. Who aims at acquiring knowledge and wisdom may do his utmost to obtain the aforesaid four fundamental qualities, for nothing at all will be achieved in holy magic without these requirements. Now we'll follow the third step exercises. Magic Mental Training 3. In the second grade course, we have learned to practice sensorial concentration by training each sense. On this step, we shall widen our concentration power, expanding from one sense to two or three senses at once. I shall quote some examples, with the help of which the skilled student will be able to arrange his own sphere of action. Imagine plastically a clock hanging on the wall with its pendulum swinging to and fro. Your imagination must be so perfect and constructive as if it were there, indeed and factually, a clock hanging on the wall. Hang on to this double imagination of seeing and hearing for 4 or 5 minutes. In the beginning, you will succeed in doing so for only seconds, but by means of frequent repetition, you will be able to hold on to your imagination for a longer while. Practice makes perfect. Repeat this experiment with a similar object, such as a gong, of which you must hear not only the sound but also see the person sounding it. Or try to imagine you see a brook and hear the rustling of the water, or a cornfield stirred by the wind, and you are listening to the whispering of the breeze. Now try for a change and look for similar experiments, arranging them all so that two or more senses are affected. Other experiments with optical and acoustic imageries may be composed, where the eyes and tactual sense of the touch, are engaged. All your senses have to be quickened and trained for concentration. You should make a special point of seeing, hearing, and feeling, all of which is indispensable for progress in magic. I cannot emphasize enough the high significance in these exercises have you for your development as a magician. Practice such exercises carefully and daily. If you will be able to hold on to 2 or 3 sense concentrations at the same time for at least 5 minutes, your task will be accomplished. If you begin to feel tired during the concentration exercises, stop and cease to go on. Postpone these exercises till a few more favorable moment when you feel mentally and physically fit. Beware of falling asleep during an exercise. Experience has shown early morning hours to be most suitable for concentration work. As soon as you have attained a certain skill in the preceding concentration exercise, and if, consequently, you are capable to engage 2 or 3 senses at one time for at least 5 minutes, you may go on. Choose a comfortable position, again, for which all the concentration work is absolutely necessary. Close your eyes and form an imaginary picture in full plasticity of well-known country place, village, house, garden, meadow, heath, wood, etc. Hold on to this imagery. Every trifling detail, such as color, light, and form, is to be kept exactly in mind. All that you are imagining ought to be modeled in such plastic forms as to allow you to touch them, as if you were present there in fact. You must not let anything slip. Nothing should escape your observation. If the image becomes blurred or is about to vanish, recall it again, and all the more distinctly, if you have managed to hold the plasticity of the picture fast for at least 5 minutes, the task is achieved. Next, let us try to apply the auditory concentration of the same imagery. Perhaps you were imagining a wonderful forest. Listen then at the same time to the warbling of the birds, the murmuring of the brook, the rustling of the wind, the humming of the bees, and so on. If you succeed in one imagery, try a similar one. This exercise will be fulfilled as soon as you are able to imagine any region, place, or spot, like and engage 2 or 3 senses at once for 5 minutes. If you have reached this degree of concentration, try to do the same exercise with your eyes open, whether fixing your look at one definite point of staring into vacancy. The physical surroundings then must no longer exist for you, and the imagery you chose is to appear floating in the air before your eyes. When you are able to hold such imagery fast for 5 minutes exactly, you may choose another one. This exercise is to be regarded as fully completed if you are able to produce any imagery you like with your eyes open and keep it, with one or several senses for 5 minutes. In all of your further concentration exercise, you ought to proceed in the same way as if reading a novel when you unfold the images of the single events in your mind. We have learned how to form representation of places and localities we know and have already seen before. Now let us try to imagine localities we have never seen before in our life. At first, we shall do it with our eyes closed, and if we succeed in doing so with 2 or 3 senses at once for 5 minutes, let us do it with our eyes open. This exercise is fully completed if we have indeed managed to keep this imagination for 5 minutes with our eyes open. Now, let us pass over from an inanimate object to living creatures. We shall imagine various animals such as dogs, cats, birds, horses, cows, chickens, etc., plastically as we did before with our concentration. Practice with your eyes closed for 5 minutes, and later on with your eyes open. Mastering this exercise, imagine the animals in movement, such as a cat washing itself, or catching of a mouse, drinking milk, or a dog barking, a bird flying, and so forth. The scholar may choose such or similar scenes at his own liking, first with his eyes closed, and later on with them open. If you manage it for 5 minutes without any disturbance, the purpose is fulfilled, and you may go on to the next exercise. Now concentrate on men in the same kind of way. Start with your friends, relatives, or acquaintances, deceased people, and later imagine strangers you've never seen before. First their features only, then the whole head, and finally the fully dressed body, always beginning with your eyes closed and opening after a while. You must have reached a minimum of 5 minutes before you pass over to the next exercise, dealing with men and their movements, such as walking, working, talking, etc. If you have noticed a success with one sense, say visually, add another sense, like auditory or imagination, so that you can hear the individual talking and imagine his voice. Always endeavor to adapt imagination into reality. The modulation of the voice, slow or fast speeds, just as the person of your imagination actually does or did. Practice first with eyes closed and then with your eyes open. If you have booked any success in this field too, concentrate your imagination on quite strange people, retaining their different features and voices. They may be people of both sexes and of any age whatsoever. After that, imagine people of other races, women, men, young and old, children, all types of people. Make shift with books or magazines. Visits to a museum can also do this for this purpose. Having managed all this and keeping the imagination for 5 minutes with the eyes closed as well as open, your magic mental training of this third step will be completed. All these exercises have required perseverance, patience, persistence, and toughness to cope with the enormous difficulties of the task. But those scholars who master them will be very satisfied with the powers they won through these concentration exercises. The next step will teach them how to deepen these powers. Such concentration exercises do not only strengthen the willpower and the concentrative facility, but all the intellectual and mental forces, lifting the magic capabilities of the mind on a higher level. And besides, they are indispensable as a preliminary practice for the thought transference or telepathy. Let me try that again. Let me try that again. Lifting the magic capabilities of the mind on a higher level, and besides, they are indispensable as a preliminary practice for thought transference, telepathy, mental wandering, television, clairvoyance, and other things more. Without these facilities, the magic disciple will never get on. Therefore, you ought to make every effort to work carefully, and conscientiously. Magic Psychic Training 3. Before starting on the training for this step, the astral pose of the elements in the soul has to be established by the introspection and self-control, unless you wish to do mischief to yourself. If it is absolutely sure that none of the elements are prevailing, you ought to keep working on the refinement of the character in the course of the development, but you might as well go on to work with the elements in the astral body. The task of this step will be to acquire the basic qualities of the elements, producing and dissolving them in the body at will. We are already acquainted with the theory of the action of the elements. Let us deal with the practice. Fire, with its expansion or expandability in all directions, has the specific quality of heat, and therefore it is spherical. Let us then, first of all, acquire this quality and produce it at will in the body as well as in the soul. And body control, we choose an attitude allowing us to remain in a comfortable position, free of any disturbance. Any Indians call this position asana. For the sake of better understanding, we shall also use this expression henceforth. Take the asana position and imagine yourself in the center of the fiery element in which the shape of the ball envelops the universe. Imagine all around you, even the entire universe being fiery. Now, inhale the fiery element with your nose and at the same time with your whole body. This is called pore breathing. Draw deep breaths regularly without pressing air or straining the lungs. The material in the astral body ought to resemble an empty vessel into which the element is being inhaled or sucked in with each breath. This heat ought to grow more and more intense with every breath. The heat and expansion power must become stronger. The fiery pressure higher and higher until you feel yourself at last fiery red hot. This whole process of inhaling the fiery element through the body is, of course, a purely imaginary occurrence and should be exercised with the utmost plastic imagination of the element. Start unseen times inhaling the fire element and increase each exercise by 1 breath or more. An average of 20 to 30 breaths will do. Only physically strong pupils of great willpower are allowed to exceed this number at discretion. Use the string of beads to spare counting the breaths by moving 1 bead with each inhalation. In the beginning of the imaginary heat will be perceived psychically only, but with every repeated experimentation the heat will become physically, as well as psychically, more perceptible. From a rise of temperature, outbreak of perspiration, it can actually increase to a fever. Once the scholar has managed to establish the balance of the elements in the soul, such as an accumulation of elements in his body can do him no harm. Having finished the exercise of imaginary accumulation of the fiery element, you will, through imagination, feel the heat and the expansion of the fire. And now you must start on the exercise in the opposite succession. Inhaling the fiery element normally through the mouth and exhaling it through the whole body into the universe again. The number of breaths done when exhaling the element has to correspond exactly to the number of inhalations. For example, if you begin the 7 inhalations of the fiery element, you must also exhale 7, the element 7 times. This is very important, because after finishing the exercise, the scholar should have the impression that not the smallest particle of this element has remained in him. The sensation of heat it produced in him must disappear. Therefore, it is advisable to use the string of beads for breathing in as well as breathing out. Do the exercises with the eyes closed at first, and then with the eyes open. The Tibetan explorer and traveler Alexandria David Neal, in her books, has a similar experiment practiced by lamas under the name of tumo, which is, however, very imperfect for practical purposes for Europeans and not at all sustainable for any students of magic. In the Orient, there are adepts who perform this exercise for years and are able to condense the fire element to such a degree that they walk about naked and barefoot even in the winter without being affected by the cold. They can, indeed, in just a few minutes, dry wet sheets which they wrap around their bodies by accumulating the fire element. They affect even their environs, which means the surrounding nature as well, so that they succeed in melting snow and ice, not only around themselves, but at a distance of kilometers. Such and similar phenomenon can be produced by a European also, if he can afford the necessary time for it. For our progress in magic, we need, however, to matter not only one, but all the elements. A fact that is absolutely correct from the magic standpoint. So much for this. Let us now pass on to the exercise concerning the air element. What has been said about the fire element applies in the same way to the air element, but for the fact that a different imagination of senses has to be considered. Take up the same comfortable position. Close your eyes and imagine yourself to be in the middle of a mass of air that is filling the whole universe. You must not perceive anything of your surroundings, and nothing should exist for you but the air-filled space embracing the whole universe. You are inhaling the air element into your empty vessel of the soul, and the material body through the whole body breathing with the lungs and pores. Every breath is filling the whole body to an increasing extent and with more air. You have got to hold fast the imagination of your body being filled with air by each breath in such a way that it resembles a balloon. Combine it at the same time with the imagination that your body is becoming lighter, as light as air itself. The sensation of lightness should be so intense that finally you do not feel your body at all. In the same way you did begin with the fire element, start now also with the 7 inhalations and exhalations. With this exercise done, you should again have the positive feeling that not the smallest particle of the air element remains in your body, and consequently, you should feel in the same normal condition as before. To avoid any counting, use the string of beads again. Encase the number of breaths, inspirations, and expirations from one exercise to the next, but do not exceed the number of 40. By constant practice of this experiment, adepts will succeed in producing phenomenon of levitation, such as walking on the surface of water, floating in the air, displacement of the body, and many more, especially if one concentrates on one element only. But magician is not satisfied with one-sided phenomenon, because this would not agree with his aims. He wants to penetrate far deeper into the cognition and the mastery and achieve more. Now follows the description of the patients concerning the water element. Take up the position which you are accustomed to by now. Close your eyes and forget all around you. Imagine the whole universe is an enormous ocean, and you are in the center of it. Your body becomes filled with this element, and with each whole body breath, you should feel the cold of the water in your whole body. If you have filled up your whole body with this element in 7 breaths, you should empty it with 7 breaths. Not the smallest amount of water should remain in you at the last exhalation. Here again, the string of beads will be a great help to you. With each new exercise, take 1 more breath. The more often you practice this exercise, the more distinctly you will feel the cold properties of the water element. You ought to feel, as it were, like a lump of ice. Each of the exercises should not exceed 20 minutes. As times go by, you ought to be able to keep your body cold as ice, even in the hottest summer weather. Oriental adepts master this element in such a degree that they can perform the most astonishing phenomenon straight away. For example, they produce rain during the hot or dry season and stop it again at will. They can ban thunderstorms, calm down the roaring ocean, control all animals in the water, and so on. Such and similar phenomenon are no miracles for a real magician who understands them perfectly. All that is left is the description of the last element, that of the earth. Take up your routine position as you did before. This time, imagine the whole universe being the earth with yourself sitting in the middle of it. But do not imagine the earth as a lump of clay, but being a dense earthly material. The specific property of this earthly material is density and gravity. Now you ought to fill your body with this heavy material. Begin again with 7 breaths and increase 1 breath more with each new exercise. You must manage to concentrate so much of the earthly material into yourself that your body seems as heavy as a lump of lead and almost paralyzing by the weight. Breathing out happens in the same way as it did in the other exercises. At the end of this exercise, you ought to feel as normal as before the beginning. The duration of this exercise also is limited to 20 minutes at the most. This exercise, sadhana, is practiced by a great deal of Tibetan lamas, mostly in such a way that they begin meditating on a lump of clay, dissecting it and going on to meditate on it again. The genuine magician knows better how to approach this element in a much simpler way, and to master it without such a difficult meditation process. The color of the different elements may serve as a useful resort to imagination. As far as fire is red, the air is blue, water is greenish blue, and the earth yellow, gray, or black. Color vision or sensation is quite individual, but not absolutely necessary. Anyone believing it to favor his work may use it in the beginning. What chiefly matters in our exercises is the sensory imagination. After a longer spell of exercises, everybody should be able, for example, to produce heat with the fire element in such a degree that it can be demonstrated with a thermometer as a fever heat. This preliminary exercise of element mastery needs to be given the utmost attention. The adept can produce manifold kinds of phenomenon, say by controlling the earth element, and it is left to every day to meditate on this problem for himself. Mastery of the element is the darkest chapter of magic, about which very little has been said to date, because the greatest arcanium is hidden in it. At the same time, however, it is the most important magical domain, and he who does not possess the elements will scarcely get on in magical science. Magical physical training number 3. The first step of this training course ought to have become second nature with you by now. Let us therefore go into greater detail here. The position of response of the body is to be kept during half an hour. The pore breathing of the whole body now shall be limited to certain single organs. The beginner must be enabled to allow any part of his body to breathe at will through the pores. One begins with the feet and finishes with the head. The practice is as follows. Sit in your usual position and close your eyes. Transfer yourself with your consciousness into one of your legs. It will not matter whether you start with the right leg or the left leg. Imagine your leg like the lungs, inhaling and exhaling the vital force together with your preliminary breath from the universe. Consequently, the vital power is inhaled, sucked in from the universe, and exhaled, secreted back into the universe. If you have succeeded in doing so, after 7 breaths, turn to the other leg. Having been successful herein as well, start with your hands, taking one first, then the other in order to breath, and later with both hands at the same time. If you have achieved the desired result, let us step to the next organs, such as the genitals, bowels, stomach, liver, lungs, heart, larynx, and head. The purpose of this exercise will be accomplished if you have got each organ of your body, even your smallest, to do the breathing. This exercise is all the more important as it gives us the opportunity of controlling each part of the body, charging it with vital power, healing, and restoring it to life. If we have managed to all this in our own person, it is not difficult to act on other bodies by transference of consciousness, which fact consequently plays an important part in the magnetic power transference in the magic art of healing. Please pay the greatest attention of this exercise. Another exercise of magic body training is the accumulation of vital power. We have already learned how to inhale and exhale the vital power through the whole body pore breathing. Now, let us pass on to the accumulation of vital power. Its practice is as follows. Sit in your customary position and inhale the vital force out of the universe into your body, through the lungs and the pores of your whole body. This time, however, do not give back the vital power to the universe, but keep it in your body. When breathing out, do not think about anything at all, and breathe out the consumed air quite regularly and evenly. With each new breath, you feel how you are inhaling more and more vital power, accumulating and storing it in your body. You need to feel the pressure of the vital force like compressed steam in yourself, and imagine the compressed vital power coming out of your body like heat waves from a radiator. With every breath, the forces of pressures and radiation increase, spreading out and strengthening by meters. After repeated exercises, you must be able to admit your penetrating power even for miles. You must actually feel the pressure and penetration of your rays. Practice makes perfect. Begin by inhaling 7 times and increasing by 1 inspiration with each day. Each single increase should be limited to 20 minutes at the most. This exercise has to be practiced mainly in such tasks and experiments as require a great and intense expenditure of vital force. Say the treatment of sick people, telepathy, magnetizing of objects, and so on. If the vital power is no longer wanted in this accumulated form, the body must be brought back to its original tension, because it is not advisable to walk about in everyday life in an over-dimensioned tension. It would oversustain the nerves and cause nervous irritation, exhaustion, and other bad side effects. The experiment is broken off by giving the accumulated force back to the universe through imagination while breathing out. By doing so, you will inhale pure air only and breathe out the tension of the vital force until attaining the suspension of equipoise. After a longer practice, the magician will succeed in rendering the vital force to the universe at once, as it were in an explosive manner similar to a bursting tire. This abrupt elimination should not be practiced before your body has gotten a certain resisting power. Having acquired a certain skill, you may go on to achieve the same experiment with the single parts of the body. Slowly and step by step, mainly specialize on your hands. Adepts do the same with their eyes too. Thus, they can fascinate and get under the spell of their will not only one individual, but a great number of them. Sometimes even crowds of people. A magician who can manage all this with his hands is then known for having blessed hands. The mastery of blessing or laying on of the hands depends on this. The exercise of this stage will have answered its purpose if you have learned how to accumulate vital power not only in the whole body, but in each single part of it, and to admit the rays of its accumulated force directly to the outside. When you master this exercise, the third stage of the magical physical training will be complemented. Appendix to Step 3. The scholar who has arrived at this point of his magic development will already observe a general transmutation of his individuality. His magic facilities will increase in all the spheres. As to the mental sphere, he will have obtained a stronger willpower, greater resistance, a better memory, a keener observation, and a clear intellect. In the astral sphere, he will notice that he has become calmer and steadier, and according to his aptitudes, he will further develop the facilities still slumbering in him. In the mental world, he will persuade himself that he feels healthier, fitter, and sort of rejuvenated. His vital force will far surpass that of his fellow man, and he will achieve a great deal in everyday life by means of his immense power. For example, he will be able to free any room he is living in from unfathomable influences. He will be able to treat sick persons successfully, even at remote distances, because he can emit his rays for miles. Besides, his emissive force allows him to charge objects with his desire. The scholar, then, will find out for himself when and where he can best utilize his magical facilities. But he should never forget that magic powers can be used for good as well as for agnostic purposes. Remember the quotation, "Thou shalt reap what thou hast sown." Always let your final goal to be noble things and to make mankind better. The technique of magnetism presents all possible variations, of which we are now going to show you some. 1. Space impregnation. Through pulmonary and pore breathing of your entire body, you inhale vital force, pressing it with all your imagination into your whole body so that it becomes, as it were, dynamically radiant. Your body is something like a radiant energy, an individual sun. With every inhalation, you enforce the compressed vital power as well as the radiant energy, and fill the room you live in. With the aid of this radiant power, the room must be literally sunlit. With repeated and persistent exercise, it is even possible to illuminate the room in darkness or at night to such a degree that objects can be perceived not only by the experimenter but also by laymen. Because it is possible in this way to materialize the light of the vital force in the form of real daylight, which, properly speaking, is a simple imagination exercise. This phenomenon alone will not, of course, satisfy the magician, who knows that vital force has a universal character, being not only the carrier of his ideas, thoughts, and desires, but also the realizer of his imagination, and that he can attain all things through his vital power. As for realization, it depends on the plastic imagination. If the experiencer has filled his workroom with his radiant energy, he ought to imagine what he wishes to attain, e.g., that all astral or magic influences existent in the room shall disappear and dissolve, or the magician shall feel safe and sound in the room as well as all people coming in. Besides, the magician may impregnate his rooms with the desire of being benefited in all of his works by inspirations, successes, etc. Advanced magicians screen their rooms for unwelcome people by rendering them restless and unfathomable as soon as they enter the room so that they leave, unwilling to remain in there. Such a room is loaded or impregnated with protective or alarming ideas. But it is possible to load any room in more subtle ways so that anyone who enters the room without permission will feel sort of paralyzed and repelled. You see, a magician is offered a lot of possibilities, and with the help of these instructions, you can find out other methods. The magician can give back the accumulated vital virtue to the universe when breathing out, leaving the radiant or illuminated force in the room only with the aid of his imagination. But through this same imagination, he can also suggest the vital force from the universe directly to the room without accumulating it by his physical power, especially if he has got some practice in accumulating vital force. This way, he can impregnate a room even with his own desires. Imagination combined with willpower and faith and firm conviction knows no bounds. These experiments of the magician do not depend on one definite room. He may impregnate 2 or more rooms at the same time and load an entire house with his vital force and radiant energy. According to the aforesaid method, as imagination knows neither time nor space, he can do all this at the remotest distance. As time goes on and as technique improves, he will be able to load any room, whatever and wherever, but with his regard to his ethical development, he will never make the wrong use of his facilities, but do noble things only, and his power will be unlimited, for practice makes perfect. Appendix Step 3. Biomagnetism. Let us deal with another specific property of the vital energy that is of particular relevance for the magic work. As we have already seen, each object, each animal, each human being, each form of ideas can be changed with vital force and corresponding desire of realization. The vital force, however, has the property of accepting any, Also strangers' ideas and feelings, influences, or combination of them. The concentrated vital force would therefore soon mingle with other ideas, a fact that would reduce the effect of the impregnated idea or even scuttle it if the magician did not provoke a reinforced tension by frequent repetition, thus reviving the desire or idea. But this often means loss of time and is not very favorable to the final success. The desired influence will persist only so far as the tension is effective in the desired direction. Then the vital force will dissolve, mingle with other vibrations, and the effect fades away by and by. To prevent this, a magician ought to be well acquainted with the laws of biomagnetism. The vital force accepts not only an idea, a concept, a thought, or feeling, but also time and ideas. This law respecting this specific property of the vital virtue must be considered when working with it, or later on with the elements. Therefore, when impregnating desires with the aid of vital energy, remember time and space. In magic work, you have to consider the following rules above all. Working in the Akasa principle is timeless and spaceless. In the mental sphere, you operate with time. In the astral sphere, you work with space, shape, and color. In the material world, you work with time and space simultaneously. I'm going to explain the functions of biomagnetism in the light of some examples. With the help of your vital force, charge your room with the desire that you feel well in it. Enthrall this force with the desire that, as long as you live in the room, the influence should persist, continue renewing, and keep doing so, even when you leave the room and are absent for some time. Should anyone else enter your room, ignoring that there is an accumulation of vital force, he will feel very uncomfortable in your dwelling. Now and again, you can reinforce the destiny and power of your radiant energy in your room by repeating the desire. If you live in a room influenced in such a favorable way, the stored vital force will always exert a good influence on your health and consequently on your body. The vital force in this room has the desired vibration of health. If, however, you intend to do occult exercises in this room which have nothing to do with health, follow another thought vibration. You will not book the same good results as in an unloaded room or in a room that you have charged with a desire represented to your idea. Therefore, it is always advisable to load the room with the thought vibrations corresponding to your representative work and experiments. So, for instance, you might charge a ring, a stone, or any other object with the wish that the person wearing it should be favored by the fortune and success. Now, there are two possibilities of fixing and timing. The first method consists in fixing the vital virtue on the stone or the metal with your imagination and your concentrated wish, timing it so that the force shall remain forever in it, drawing even further from the universe to bring fortune and success to the person concerned as soon as she will wear the object. You may, of course, load the object you choose for a short time only if you like, so that the influence is broken off as soon as the purposed aim at is attained. The second possibility is called universal loading, which is operated in the same way, including, however, the concentrated wish that as long time as the object, ring, stone, or jewelry exists, the bearer of it should be benefited by fortune, success, etc. Such universal loadings performed by an adept will keep their virtues and their effects for centuries. As we have learned from the history of the Egyptian mummies, such fixed forces continue acting for thousands of years. If a talisman or an object sustained and individually loaded for a definite person falls into the hands of someone else, he will not experience the least influence. But if this object returns to the true owner, this influence will go on acting. Now let me describe another field where vital force is active, namely that of healing magnetism. If a magician treats a sick person, no matter whether personally by magnetic strokes or by putting on hands or at a distance, by imagining and willpower, he must the law of time exactly if he wants to be successful. The routine manner of magnetizing is as follows. The magnetizer, with the aid of imagination, makes his vital force flow out of his body, mostly from his hands, into the sick person. This method supposes the magnetizer to be positively sound and to have a surplus of vital force, or else he will bring dangers into his own health. I am sorry to say that I have seen bad cases where the magnetizer, by excessive transfers of his own vital force, suffered such heavy damage to his health that he faced a complete nervous breakdown, apart from other side effects such as diseases of the heart and so on. Such consequences are unavoidable if the magnetizer spins more force than he is able to restore, especially if he is treating several patients at once. This method presents another disadvantage, namely that the magnetizer uses his own force to transfer his own psychic vibrations and character traits onto the patient, influencing him indirectly in a psychic way. Therefore, every magnetizer is supposed and required to be of a noble character. Yet if a magnetizer has a patient whose character properties are worse than his own, he will indirectly draw the evil influences of the patient on himself, which is disadvantage for the magnetizer in any event. The magnetizer, however, has been trained in occultism, does not give the patient all the vital force of his own body, but draws it from the universe and makes it stream into the patient's body directly through his hands together with the concentrated desire of health. With both methods, magnetizing has to be repeated often if one wants a quicker success. For disharmony or diseases, suck in and consume the transferred force very rapidly and are greedy for a further supply of force, so that the treated has to be repeated so to prevent the state from getting worse. It is otherwise with the magician. The patient feels relieved only when the magician has been psychically owned, i.e., if he has accomplished a dynamic accumulation of vital force in his own body and emits light rays of vital force. The magician can employ many methods successfully, but he must always maintain the imagination combined with the desired concentration, wishing that the patient gets better and better hour by hour from day to day. Some methods will follow, the use of which will help a magician in the treatment of diseases. Above all, he must be well versed in the diagnosis of diseases and their symptoms. He will gain this knowledge through a careful study of the respective literature. Anatomical knowledge is absolutely indispensable. He will not be so careless as to treat diseases necessitating a rapid chirurgical intervention of infectious diseases, but in such cases, he will be able to accelerate the healing process and contribute to soothing the pains, besides the medical treatment. He can manage doing so even at a distance. He would be very serviceable if physicians specialized in this field, and besides the allopathic art, learned to employ the magic practice. Therefore, the magician should only treat such sick persons as are recommended for this kind of treatment directly by a physician, or work together with the physician to avoid being regarded as a quack and a charlatan. He should follow his calling from pure love of his neighbors and not for the purpose of earning money or as a means of enriching himself. Do not climb upwards on the crudelities of mankind. Hold on to the ideal of goodness, and blessing will not fail. Ideally, colored magicians will help sick persons without them knowing anything. This kind of help is the most blissful. Let me add, some of the most conventional methods a magician can make use of without endangering his health and nervous system. Before approaching a sick person's bed, do at least 7 breaths through the lungs and pores. Accumulate an enormous amount of vital force, drawing it from the universe into your body, and let this vital force shine like the brightest light of the sun. Be repeated inhaling of the vital force. Try to produce a radiant energy of at least 10 yards around your body, which corresponds to a vital force of 10 normal persons. You ought to feel as if your accumulated vital force were lighting up like a sun. If you approach a patient with such radiance, he will instantly feel a relief, a sensation of ease, and if not afflicted by too painful an illness, he will feel an immediate alleviation. You transfer the accumulated radiant energy quite individually to the patient, and it is up to you to act as you like. A skilled magician needs no magic strokes nor lying of the hands, all that being only auxiliary manipulators, supports for the utterance of his will. He may keep his eyes open or closed during this operation. If he wants, he may look straight at the patient, but he needed not do it directly. Here it is exclusively the imagination that is working. But during the whole act of power transference, the magician may also sit with the patient without contacting him personally. Imagine that the radiant energy surrounding you will stream forth into the patient's body and be pressed into it, penetrating and illuminating all the pores of the sick person. Let your willpower order the compressed radiant energy and bring about the recovery of the patient. All the time, you have absolutely convinced that the patient is feeling better from 1 hour to the next, that he does look better every day, and you must also order the radiant energy not to escape from the body before the patient has fully recovered. Loading the body of a patient quantitatively with the radiant energy, which in a second person means a range of 1 yard, you will be able to bring about recovery in a surprisingly short time in proportion to the kind of illness. Repeat the loading after a while. Reinforce the tension of the concentrated radiant energy, and you will be very surprised indeed at noticing the wonderful success you have accomplished. First of all, the radiant energy cannot escape because you fixed it, ordering to new itself constantly. Secondly, you fix the time so that the body should feel better from hour to hour, from day to day. And thirdly, you have proportioned the power of the space corresponding to the circumference of the body. At his point, it should be recommended to fix the power of radiation at about 1 yard outside the body, which is equal to the radiation of a normal human being. With this method, you have now fulfilled the main condition of the material law of time and space. While using this method, the magician will notice that his radiant energy, which he transferred to the patient, does not diminish, but keeps on lighting up in the same intensive manner as before. This is to impute to the fact that the vital power accumulated in the body renews itself automatically, similar to the communicating pipes, instantly replacing the radiated power. Therefore, it is obvious that a magician is able to treat hundreds of patients without ruining his mental strength or his nerves. A different method has to be used if the magician is pressing the vital power directly into the patient's body or into the sick part of the body, only by way of the pores together, with the imagination of renewing itself constantly from the universe, till the moment of complete recovery is reached. Here, in the imagined desire of complete recovery is limited to time and space as well. But this method is only practiced with the patients whose nervous system is not yet wholly exhausted and can consequently bear a certain pressure of the accumulated vital power. With a well-trained magician, of course, the accumulated vital power is, as it were, materialized already, meaning that it is condensed material power that can be compared to electricity. This method, in comparison with the others, is the most popular because it is very simple and exceedingly effective. A very peculiar method is to let the patient inhale one's own radiant power emanation with the help of the imagination. Presuming the patient to be able to concentrate, he can do so on himself, otherwise the magician has to perform the imagination instead of the patient. In practice, the occurrence is as follows. Your radiant energy is emitting up to a range of 10 yards. As you are near the patient, he is actually swimming in the light of your radiation, which has been impregnated with the desire of recovery. The patient of whom this power has been concentrated will be firmly convinced that he is inhaling your radiant energy with every breath and will get well. He must imagine intensely that he will go on feeling better and better, even when the magician will no longer be near him, presuming that the patient to be able to concentrate, or, in the case of sick children, you imagine yourself that with every inhalation the patient accepts your own radiation of vital power, conveys it to the blood, and will bring about the complete recovery. Here also, you will have to concentrate on the wish that the force inhaled by patient should keep on working positively in him. This has been an example of vital force transference from the magicians to another bodies by breathing. We can rely on the word of the Bible when our Lord Jesus Christ was touched by a sick woman in the hope of recovery. Our Lord felt the dominion of his vital power, and he remarked to his disciples, I have been touched. Working with vital power and magnetism, one has to consider time and space. With a view to this fact, I have quoted several examples concerning the treatments of diseases, and I could still mention quite a number of methods for treating sick people from the magnetic standpoint. For example, the magician is able to take up a connection with the mind of a sleeping patient and to realize various methods of treatment in the patient's body. Apart from treating the sick with vital power, he can also cure them magically with the help of elements, magnetism, and electricity. The detailed description of all the methods and possibilities of treatments would certainly fill a very voluminous book. In this work, I am only going to point out single procedures of treatment with regard to time and space. That is magnetism. High adepts and saints who have trained their imagination to such perfection that all their imaginers are realized immediately in all planes do not need methods anymore. Such people have only to express any kind of desire and it will be realized at the very same time and moment. Summary of exercises of Step 3. 1. Magic mental training. Concentration on thoughts with 2 or 3 senses at once. Concentration on objects, landscapes, and places. Concentration on animals and human beings. 2. Magic psychic training. Inhaling of the elements in the whole body. Fire is warmth, air is lightness, water is coolness, and earth is gravity. 3. Magic physical training. Retaining of step 1, which has to become a habit. Accumulation of vital power by breathing through the lungs and pores in the whole body in different parts of the body. Appendix to step 3. Impregnation of space for reasons of health, success, etc. Biomagnetism. Appreciate you guys for watching. I will see you tomorrow.